Information, please. Wake up, Mr. and Mrs. America. Time to stump the expert. This is the fifth in a series of struggles between the public and the expert. A new type of question and answer game in which the timid public turns on the mental giant. If you want to take part in this new game now sweeping the country, here's how it's done. Send us questions and the correct answers. If acceptable to our editors, they will be presented to a board of experts for the first time during each broadcast. Questions accepted will win $2 each for the person who submits them. Any questions the experts cannot answer will be rewarded with an extra $5. The contest will be refereed by our Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Clifton Fadiman, literary critic of the New Yorker magazine. I present Clifton Fadiman.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. We have a particularly brilliant quartet here this evening, and while they're busy polishing up their Phi Beta Kappa keys, I'll introduce them to you. First, we have our old friend, the famous columnist, Franklin P. Adams, holding his hand to his head to keep the information from spilling out. Next, Mr. Marcus Duffield, daily news editor of the Herald Tribune, and our shark on current events. Next, we have Mr. John Kieran, who not only runs a masterly sports column in the New York Times, but also claims to know everything about birds, beasts, bees, and flowers. We shall see, Mr. Kieran, we shall see. And finally, as our special guest of honor, I'm proud to introduce the world-famous playwright, Marc Connolly, author of The Green Pastures, and at present producer of The Two Bouquets, one of the most charming plays of this season, or any season. Hope you like that, Mr. Connolly. We're always nice to our experts for the first 3 minutes. Now, folks, please remember, these four towering intellects, let's see your intellect tower, Mr. Adams, for a moment, thank you, have not seen these questions in advance. This is an informal program in which anything may happen, and very likely will. Questions are addressed to the entire board. Any member who gets a brainstorm may raise his hand. Now let him take a crack at the answer. The question must be answered by one member, except where the question is composed of more than two parts, in which case the board can cooperate. But if any part is answered incorrectly, $5 is forfeited. When you hear that cash register sound, that means $5 is actually being paid out to the lucky questioner. That clear? Now, a number of people are here in the studio now, all set to ask the questions they sent in. Those questions which we received from out-of-town listeners will be presented to the board by your Master of Ceremonies. We're all ready now to throw our questions to the lion. Listen carefully. The experts are sharpening their wits. And just for fun, we'll start the program with a little music. The first question comes from Mr. James Franklin of Chicago, Illinois. We're going to play a few notes from 7 famous songs, which I shall name. You are asked, my board of experts, to name the performer who made each song famous. And you have to name 5 out of 7 correctly. You can do that cooperatively. The first is My Man. Let's have it. Libby. Mr. Adams.
Fanny Bright.
That's quite correct. The second is My Bill. Mr. Connolly is crazy to answer that question. Mr. Connolly.
Helen Morgan.
That's quite correct. The third, It's So Delightful to Be Married. Mr. Adams, with that well-known confident smile on his face.
Anna Hill.
That's quite correct. The next is Some of These Days. They look worried. They look worried. Still don't know. They're talking to each other. Mr. Adams never heard of it. Some of These Days were made famous by Sophie Tucker. That's one wrong so far. The next is Give My Regards to Broadway. All right, Mr. Kieran, you seem to know that one.
I think it was a great baseball fan by the name of George M. Cohen.
Quite correct. The sixth, Whoopee. Connolly at bat again.
Eddie Cantle.
Quite correct. And last and finally, Minnie the Moocher. Oh, I think we've got them. I think we've got them. Miss Connolly?
I know the man who sang it.
Who was it?
Joe Cook.
I don't want Joe Cook. I won't accept him tonight. Well, they got 5 out of 7, so they just escaped losing the $5. Actually, Minnie the Moocher was made famous, I think, by Cab Calloway. Wouldn't that be right? Thank you very much. The next question comes to us from Mr. Dillard Gay, 9811 Dearborn Avenue, Detroit, Michigan. Question. What man was nominated to run for the office of President of the United States while serving a term in prison? Mr. Duffield.
Eugene B. Debs.
Eugene B. Debs is correct. Have you ever wondered what the situation would have been, Mr. Duffield, if he'd ever been elected under those circumstances? Perish the thought. Next question. From Dr. George F. Herity, 674 Park Place, Brooklyn, New York. Now, Dr. Herity has some conditions about this question. In the first place, in order to answer the question, I shall have to ask all 4 of my experts to give me the beginning of the Yale cheer. The Yale cheer.
How about Lincoln?
Mr. Adams?
I won't give it at all.
Adams won't give it. Why not?
I don't like Yale.
Very bad. Mr. Adams is not allowed to say that sort of thing over the air. You realize that if you don't give us the Yale cheer together with your colleagues, you're going to lose the sum of $5?
I'll give it.
All right, gentlemen. 1, 2, 3. Now, but that's only the beginning of Dr. Harity's question. The question is, with what animal and what famous poet is that cheer associated? Mr. Connolly.
Associated with frogs and Aristophanes.
Aristophanes played the frog quite correct. They're pretty good so far, but we'll break them down. This one comes from Miss Nell Wynn, 1203 Woodside Building, Greenville, South Carolina. Question. What popular dancers bear or include the names of each of the following? Now, you can get together on this voice. A fruit. Volunteer. What popular dancers bear or include the names of each of the following? A fruit, Mr. Connolly?
Big Apple.
Big Apple is correct. Grapevine would do, of course. A city. Mr. Adams?
Charleston.
Charleston is correct. Also Chicago. Also Baltimore. That's all I have down on the card. An animal? Mr. Kieran, you know all about animals. All right, now, Mr. Adams.
The foxtrot.
Foxtrot's correct. Let's have another one. Connolly, do you know another one?
The grizzly bear.
Grizzly bear, bunny hug, camel walk. Oh, there are thousands of them. At least 3. 4, a state. That's the State of the Union, I understand.
Virginia Rio.
That's correct. That came from Mr. Duffield, current events expert. And finally, a vehicle. A vehicle. They look all broken up.
Camel walk?
Camel is a vehicle. What am I going to do with a man like that? He thinks the camel is a vehicle.
Ship?
I won't accept it.
Drag.
I beg pardon?
The drag?
The drag isn't a vehicle either.
Oh, it
You
is.
mean a wheelbarrow?
Never riding a drag?
Don't argue with me. You have no time. No, the answer is truckin'. Truckin'. It's as simple as ABC, and that's going to cost you $5. Next question. Miss Esther Quitt of London, Ontario, is here to read a question herself. Miss Quitt.
In what modern country did a king succeed his son to the throne?
I'll repeat that, thank you. In what modern country did a king succeed his son to the throne? Mr. Duffield.
King Carol took the throne of Romania away from his poor youngster, Michael.
That's quite correct. Now, the next one has to do entirely with noses. Noses, you know, N-O-S-E-S. And it comes to us all the way from Santa Fe, New Mexico, from Mr. Jonathan Rush. The following description refers to stage personalities or roles that made them famous. From these descriptions, can you name the actors? 1, a long-nosed gallant. Miss Connolly.
Cyrano de Bergerac.
That's quite correct. 2, a red-nosed spellbinder. Miss Connolly again.
W.C.
That's quite correct. Apparently, Mr. Connolly knows something about the stage. Had no idea where he's picked up his knowledge. 3, a nose for crime. Now, this may be motion picture personalities, of course. Miss Connolly again.
Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes, very good. And 4, the biggest nose of them all. Mr. Kieran.
Mr. James Durante.
Mr. James Durante is correct. You wouldn't accept Jumbo the Elephant, I suppose.
As a pink hitter, yes.
Now, Mr. Joe Eakins of 345 West 86th Street is here tonight to read his question. What Mr. Eakins has done is to translate 2 famous lines by a contemporary poet. He's going to read them to you.
It is unusual for the male of the species to make amatory overtures to a female of the species whose orbs are obscured by lenses. Can you quote the original and give the source?
I'll run that through once more. It is unusual for the male of the species to make amatory overtures, lovely phrase, to a female of the species whose orbs are obscured by lenses. Why, they all seem to know it. They all know it. Mr. Kieran has 2 hands up. Mr. Kieran.
Men don't make passes at gals with glasses by Dorothy Parker.
That's correct. Actually, you have changed the lines a little bit, made them a trifle ungrammatical, Mr. Kieran. Men seldom make passes at girls who wear glasses, is the correct version, but I think we'll let you go. The next one comes from Mr. Lou Auerbach, 134 East Moshaloop Parkway, Bronx, New York. Explain each of the following. The board can get together on this. Dutch courage, Dutch treat, Dutchman's breeches, the Flying Dutchman, 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 the Flying Dutchman.
That's one very brave. That's one very brave. That's one very brave.
Is that your explanation of what Dutch courage is? I'm afraid I must mark you wrong on that. Mr. Kieran.
Can I go backward on them?
Well,
the
question's been answered wrong already, but I'd like to get the correct answer from you.
Well, I think Dutch courage is courage inspired maybe by a good flow of beer.
Yes, that's quite correct.
And what's the second one?
The second one is Dutch treat.
The Dutch treat, that's where you pay as you go.
That's right. Dutchman's breeches.
Oh, Dutchman's breeches, that's right down my alley. That's Dicentricularia.
I beg your pardon.
A small flower that is now out of season, blooms around here in April.
Well, why didn't you say that to begin with? And 4th, the Flying Dutchman.
Well, the Flying Dutchman is a marine legend. At least that's one of the Flying Dutchmen.
Correct. One's enough. Know any more Flying Dutchmen?
Yes, Hans Wagner, the famous shortstop of the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Mr. Kieran did very well for us, but unfortunately, Mr. Duffield's mistake got the rest of you in Dutch, and so you are losing $5. I'm sorry to say. So far, we have lost $10, I believe, to date. The next one comes from Mrs. Fern Palin, 2426 Mission Apartment 8, San Francisco, California. Now, listen carefully, gentlemen. Listen carefully. It's a young lady, Mr. Adams is very attentive, sitting directly opposite you in a trolley car, suddenly started to nictitate. To nictitate. Explain why you would react in one of the following ways. Feel embarrassed, call a policeman, feel pleased. Mr. Kieran.
Was she good looking?
The answer is always yes when there's any doubt. Yes.
Well, then you wouldn't be out of place to step over and sit beside her. Because she gave you the wink.
That's quite correct. Finally, Mr. Kieran, when he's not attending baseball games and sporting matches, has done a good deal of education in his time. Thank you very much, Mr. Kieran. What a life you've led. The next, for Mr. Bernard Gelb, 1290 Lafayette Avenue, Bronx, New York. Identify the play, motion picture, or the actor with whom 4 of the following lines are associated. Now, there are 5 lines altogether. You've got to get 4 of them. First is, that's all there is. There isn't any more. Volunteer. That's all there is. There isn't any more. Miss Adams.
Miss Ethel Barrymore.
Yes, remember the play in which that was said? You won't count you wrong if you don't. Miss Connolly, do you remember it?
Sunday.
Sunday is correct. The second. What's all the shooting for? Miss Connolly.
The play is The Tavern.
That's correct. And do you remember the actor who made the line sing?
Yes. Squat comedian.
Brother. I think it was Arnold Bailey, wasn't it?
No. It was not.
There's no time to swallow.
It was not. It was said by the...
However, you got it right on the tap. I'm a very remarkable fella. I'm a very remarkable fella. I'm reading this off a card, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want you to get any false impressions. I'm a very remarkable fellow, Mr. Connolly.
Peter Pan.
Peter Pan? No,
Yes.
That's wrong. That's one wrong so far. Can anyone supply the correct answer to that? It's from Seventh Heaven. And I suppose you might name Mr. Charles Farrell and Mr. James Stewart and Mr. Joseph Kiltrout as any one of the 3 actors who made the line famous. At least famous to some people. I never heard it before in my life. 4, Wait for Baby. Mr. Kieran.
That's from the war play by Lawrence Starling.
That's right. Give us the name.
Just a minute. Oh, that's a pass, that sounds. It's going right on my...
What Price Laurie?
What Price Laurie is correct. All right. And never give a sucker an even break. Miss Connolly?
By W.C. Fields.
Yes,
in
that's
Coffee.
Right. In Coffee. 4 out of 5 is what the boys got. Just by the skin of their teeth. Adam, stop misstating that. Mr. Joseph Klein of 485 Ocean Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, sends us this very good question. Identify the following games. Kit Kat, that's P-I-T-C-A-T, Skittles, and curling. Miss Kieran?
Well, Kit Kat is a game that you play with a small wooden peg and a stick that you tip it up with and then wallop it. You see the boys playing it around the street.
Right.
Skittles is a game from which we probably get our bowling game. And curling, of course, is a 4-man team game that's played on ice where you shoot some heavy stones down at concentric circles down the rink.
That sounds quite correct. It is correct. Miss Kieran, isn't Kit Kat also called One-A-Cat?
No, One-A-Cat is a baseball game. It's played with an insufficient number of boys to make up a full 9.
This is extra information that we're getting free of charge. However, the question was answered quite correct. From Mr. Winifred B. Rogerson of 47 Lemuel Avenue, Chicopee, Massachusetts, comes the following. Now, this is a very pretty question. To what birds, Miss Kieran, this is more or less in your line, to what birds do the following questions based upon well-known songs refer? Now, there are 5 of them altogether, and you have to get all of the 5. 1. What bird was asked, why do you sit singing willow, tip, willow, tip, willow?
Little Tom Tip.
Little Tom Tip's correct, or Dicky Bird, I believe, in another stanza of that same song. 2. What bird went to sea with the pussycat?
The owl.
That's still Mr. Kieran. He's a bear on birds. What bird woke me last night when all was still? Mr. Adams.
The Nightingale.
The Nightingale is correct. 4.
Took that bird out of my mouth.
To what bird are we urged to listen? Mr. Kieran?
Hark, hark, the lark.
No, sir. Are we urged to listen, Mr. Adams?
The Mockingbird.
The mockingbird is correct. How about the sixth? To what bird are we urged to hark? And now,
For the second time, hark, hark,
I
the
know
lark.
that you missed on number 4, and that is going to cost us $5. From Miss Inez Heibel of 226 Franklin Street, Butler, Pennsylvania, comes the following. Identify 3 out of 4 prominent women to whom these unusual first names belong. Now, these names are so unusual, I'm probably going to have a lot of fun pronouncing them. Here we go. The first is Marina, M-A-R-I-N-A. The second is Elvire, E-L-V-I-R-E. The third is Hepzibah. I won't even try to spell that one. And the fourth is Farida, F-A-R-I-D-A. Now, can any one of you gentlemen take the whole question and answer it complete? What was the second one? The second one was Elvire, E-L-V-I-R-E. I'm doing my best on the pronunciation this evening. They're making notes, folks. Connolly's brow is furrowed. To drive a mule team through one of those furrows. Anybody got a mule team?
I only got 3 answers.
Well, let's have the 3.
Marina is the Duchess of Kent.
Marina is the Duchess of Kent, correct.
Hepzibah is Yehudi Menuhin's sister.
That's correct.
And Farida is the Queen of Egypt.
That's correct. And let's have... We've got the question in the bag. We've named 3 out of 4, but let's get Elvire. Mr. Duffield. Now, Mr. Duffield is an authority on current events.
Her face is familiar, but I can't remember her name.
You say her face is familiar.
Yes, we used to play Indians together.
You used to play Indians with Elvire. Well, you must have had a fine time with her. It's Mrs. DeYoung, the mother of the quintuplet. Well, they got 3 out of 4. Very good. Shame on Mr. Duffield, an expert on current events, not knowing a question concerned with the quintuplet. Mr. David Arscott is here of 1205 75th Street, Brooklyn, New York, to read his question. Mr. David Arscott.
This beetle is a shrubby plant, the leaves of which are chewed by a certain Asiatic. What is beetlehood?
Read that over again, please.
This beetle is a shrubby plant, the leaves of which are chewed by a certain Asiatic. What is Beetlejuice?
Anybody know the answer to that?
How do you spell that last part?
How do you spell that, Beetlejuice?
Beetlejuice.
B-E-T-L-G-E-U-S-E.
Well, that's,
All right, Mr. Connolly, what is Beetlejuice?
It's one of the largest of the distant stars.
That's quite correct. It's one of the largest of the distant stars.
and
Next,
it's also spelled wrong.
G-E-U-S-E.
G-U-E-U-S-E. Don't quarrel, ladies and gentlemen. We have too little time for quarreling. The next question, I'll read myself. For Mr. Jones, David L. Jones, as a matter of fact, of Denville, Massachusetts. If you caught a Frenchman in the act of sternutation, sounds like poetry, why might you do one of the following, and which one? Cry, Vive la France, and kiss him, challenge him to a duel, bless him. Mr. Kieran.
Why, give him the French of our English, God bless you, because he's simply sneezing.
Yes, sternutation is sneezing. That's correct. These sporting editors pick up the darndest information. The next one comes from Mrs. Robert W. Holmes of 28 Billingham Street, Somerville, Massachusetts. Name the defeated presidential candidate of the Republican or Democratic Party beginning with 1916 and in order. Mr. Duffield.
I don't know why I always get these presidents. 1916 was Mr. Hughes.
That's correct.
1920 was Mr. Warren. Wait a minute now. Mr. Cox.
That's correct.
1924 was Mr. John W. Davis.
Correct.
1928 was Mr. Alfred E. Smith.
Correct.
1932 was, who was that man?
Political commentary over there. 1932.
That is Mr. Landon.
Mr. 1932.
Oh, I skipped one.
Beg your pardon. What was 1932?
1932 was Mr. Hoover.
That's correct.
And 1936, Mr. Landon.
That's quite correct. Now for Mr. W.L. Greer, 1709 Harvard Avenue, Canton, Ohio, comes this question. Name 4 books, you only have to name 4, whose titles suggest kinds of weather. Weather, you know weather. All right, let's get cooperative answers on this. First volunteer, Mr. Duffy.
If winter comes.
Winter comes, very good. Mr. Kieran.
Bromfield, the rains came.
That's correct. Mr. Connolly, perhaps you have one. Or Mr. Adams. Let's say the novels. More books.
Storm over Mexico.
Storm over Mexico is perfectly all right. And 4. We have 3 so far. Mr. Kieran?
I'm sorry, I heard a whisper of the south wind.
South wind is correct. Now, I think really it ought to be perfectly fair and square. We ought to see if we can't get one more.
Rain with Gene Eagles.
Rain with Gene Eagles turned out to be a book finally. That's quite correct. Oh, there are a number of others one might mention. Typhoon, The Mortal Storm, which is a great bestseller at the moment. A High Wind in Jamaica. And here's one that'll slay you. George Moore's Hail and Farewell.
Rings a bell on that.
The total record of penalties so far is $15. They're not doing badly, not doing badly. From Miss Helen Lewis of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, comes the following very amusing question. To what does each of the following words refer? Schnitzel, Schnitzler, Schnozzle, Schnauzer, and Schnockenberg. I'll give them to you one at a time. Schnitzel. Volunteers on Schnitzel. Mr. Adams is on Schnitzel. What do you have, Mr. Adams?
Schnitzel is a veal cutlet.
A veal cutlet's correct. Now, Schnitzler.
He's a playwright.
He's a playwright. Now, Schnozzle. The radio audience cannot see that gesture, Mr. Kieran.
The nostrils, 2 nostrils, a good-sized pair.
Yes. A good nose. Schnauzer, Mr. Kieran.
A schnauzer is the type of dog, a long-haired dog.
Yeah. And finally, Schnockenberg. This is the one that's going to slay them. Schnockenberg. Don't you know it, Mr. Kieran?
Well, it sounds over a mountain.
Oh, no. Might have been a mountain originally. Schnockenberg, if no one knows it, is a contemporary American painter, and that is going to cost us $5. So we have it. Schnitzel, Schnitzler, Schnozzle, Schnauzer, Schnockenberg. Pretty snappy, I think, on the whole. Have time for one more question. This one comes from Mr. Eugene Bird of Black Mountain, North Carolina. Who were the first diet enthusiasts, according to Mother Goose? The first diet enthusiasts. Miss Connolly.
Mr. and Mrs. Spratt.
Yes. Jack Spratt would eat no fat. His wife would eat no lean. Of course, there was also Taffy, the Welshman, who was somewhat partial to beef. We won't allow him in, though. I think that's about all we'll have time for this evening, ladies and gentlemen. And now for the total penalty, $20. The kitty has been reduced by that round sum. Thank you, all members of the board and all the folks that have submitted questions. And now, Mr. Cross, our announcer, has a word for you about next week's contest. Good night, everybody, and come again.
Thank you, Mr. Fadiman. We meet again next week at 8:30 for another quiz contest between the public and the experts. The board of experts for next week will include Franklin P. Adams, Bernard Jaffe, John Kieran, and Howard Dietz, author of Broadway plays and publicity director for the MGM Studios. Send us your questions and don't forget to include the correct answers. There are no restrictions on the number you may submit. For each question chosen, you get $2. And then if the board flops on that question, you get $5 more. All questions become the property of Information Please. Questions on all subjects are welcome. History, sport, literature, music, science, movies, and so on. Make the questions interesting and amusing on subjects the expert should know and the public would like to learn about. So come on, everybody. Join our new game of quizzing and stumping the expert. Send your questions to Information Please, WJZ, the National Broadcasting Company, New York City.